Funding for what I do is provided in part by my generous supporters on Patreon, and by direct donations from viewers like you. Thank you! Hey yo, Kelvin here. Today I'd like to talk to you guys about taking criticism. Whether it be positive, negative, constructive, or any measure in between, criticism is something all creators will eventually face as a direct consequence of sharing our creativity. It is something that cannot be avoided, and something I have seen people stress themselves out over when they receive negative critiques or become addicted to praise and dismissive of anything short of that. Some people watching this may even perceive all forms of negative criticism as simply bullying. I'd like to address these issues, and share my own experiences with dealing with criticism, and hopefully help anyone watching this become better at taking criticism. Because whether you like it or not, you will receive it, and your ability or lack thereof to deal with it maturely can shape your entire creative future. First off, we need to clearly define what criticism is. A critique is a judgment of the merits and/or flaws of a given subject. That's it. As long as someone is saying what they think is right or wrong, good or bad, positive or negative, about any given thing, then it is a critique. It is important to bear in mind that, while tone can make a critique harder or easier to take, it does not in any way affect the validity of that critique. I'm gonna level with you. When I first started art, I sucked. Like, really bad. Seriously, what was I thinking with this? And nowadays, I don't suck as much. All joking aside, I honestly would not be the artist I am today if not for the criticism I received while I was learning. A while back, I mentioned my time at the VG Resource, and how they didn't sugarcoat their criticisms. Heck, some of them were downright harsh, and quite a few had nothing positive to add. I was still young at the time too, so I was much more sensitive to criticism as well. To say it was frustrating is an understatement. I got downright mad sometimes, and probably came off as an immature brat for my responses. I was asked why I even bothered trying at one point if all I was going to do was whine every time someone said something bad about my work. I told them I wanted to be a good spriter, and they told me straight up that if I wanted to get better at sprites, or any kind of art, I needed to grow up and actually take advice people were giving me. I asked, "What advice? All you guys are telling me is my art is bad." They said, "No, we're telling you what needs to be fixed to make it good. If your toaster isn't working and someone says you didn't plug it in, do you get mad, or do you plug it in? Only one answer is going to get you that delicious toast." When I actually tried changing the stuff they pointed out instead of just expecting compliments, my art actually started to improve. And you know what? I got compliments! I got acknowledgement for my improvement. It felt good. It felt like leveling up in an RPG. My hard work being recognized with a notification of my improvement, but also with other critiques to address and new enemies to fight, so to speak. By learning to take criticism, my mindset changed. I was no longer fixated on getting attention for what I could do at the time. I was more concerned with how I could make my next attempt even better than the one before. I know that a lot of this, as well as the tips I have to share, could be boiled down to just grow a thicker skin, and I know why that statement bothers some people. Usually that advice comes from people who seem rude, abrasive, or uncaring, who, at least on the outside, don't seem to share your sense of empathy. It seems like in order to be able to take what they dish out, you have to give up your empathy as well, to become a jerk who doesn't care about the feelings of others. I want to assure you that you can toughen up and not give up your compassion or empathy to do so. I still care a great deal about the feelings of others, but it's because I care about their feelings that I want to see them learn to take criticism better so that they don't get hurt. If you are the kind of person who lashes out at someone, who says something negative or calls them a bully, if you refuse to talk to someone directly because addressing them would make you upset, and if you need to step away from your computer when you feel insulted by a critique to calm yourself down, then let me tell you something. You are just like me when I started out. If I can do this, then so can you. Taking criticism is probably the most essential skill one can learn. It affects how well we learn every other skill, even ones beyond creativity. Taking care of ourselves, job performance, and even personal safety are all subject to criticism. In some cases, one's ability to take criticism could even be a matter of life and death, so it's imperative that we learn to take criticism well. Further benefits of learning to take criticism include personal growth and artistic improvement. There's no denying that as human beings, or Shadewings in my case, we learn from our mistakes. However, we are not always aware of our mistakes. The purpose of negative criticism is to point out these mistakes so that we can learn from them, prevent them in the future, and in many cases, correct them within the work being criticized. Ignoring negative criticism can cause bad habits to grow stronger and be harder to break, which will hinder our creative growth and make future work suffer for it. Positive criticism is intended to reinforce good habits, but incorrect use of it can lead to the same issue as ignoring negativity, reinforcing bad habits. It's not as important as negativity when it comes to learning, as without praise, a habit can still thrive, but with criticism against it, a habit can more easily be broken. Respect from peers and fans. Your peers will greatly respect you if you can take criticism because they know they can be honest with you, which makes working with others much easier. Fans also appreciate being heard by the artist they love, and it can be very rewarding for them when an artist takes their advice and improves their work because of it. Naturally, you shouldn't comply with every piece of advice you're given, but being open to it can go a long way towards building trust between you and your peers and fans. If you're seeking to collaborate with others, then this is essential. In the case of verbal or cyberbullies, the common goal among them is to get you to expose your immaturity to them. It's what they enjoy seeing. Deflecting criticism or getting angry and going on long rants about it will only please them. Learning to handle negativity and criticism can help you in dealing with hate and trolling as well. So, what is bullying? It's important to know exactly what online bullying is. Bullying by its nature is invasive. Simply talking about someone, even in a negative way, is not bullying. Going out of your way to make sure they hear or read those words, however, is. Messaging them to send them insults or threats, or inciting such actions in others, like telling your fans to go after someone, that's bullying. People making posts or videos about you on their own page or channel, but making no effort to make you see it, or any effort to send others after you, they're not bullying you. They are simply exercising their right to free speech. Freedom of speech is just that, freedom of speech, regardless of tone or content. Unless it directly leads to someone's harm, such as inciting violence or defaming someone in a way that can be proven false, such as slander or libel, or something that directly puts someone in danger, such as screaming fire in a public building, everyone has the right to free speech. And that's just a thing we have to accept, even when it makes us feel bad. When someone makes a post about you, you have to click on it in order to see it. You have to make the conscious decision to go there, just as you have to make the decision to put on a movie or read a book that you may find offensive. No one is forcing you to make that decision, though if they are, that's an entirely different problem, and I can't help you there. Therefore, when you click on someone else's video and listen to what they say, you are the one responsible for how you react to it. If you want to see what other people are saying about you, search for yourself and click on a video about you, especially one as obvious as, say, Kelvin Shadewing doesn't understand taking criticism. You have no one to blame but yourself if you're upset by it, because you could have just as easily decided not to click on it. What makes a valid critique? Just as defined before, a critique only needs to be a statement of what the critic thinks is good or bad about any given subject. As long as it contains that, it's a critique. No matter what you add to it, nice or mean, no matter what tone you use, no matter what context it's used in, it is a critique. Adding insults does not take away the value of the critique any more than adding compliments would affect it. To say, I think the head is too big, is a valid critique. To say, I think the head is too big, you stupid piece of crap, is still a valid critique, even if it's a rude one. To say, I think the head is too big, but you can easily fix that, is a more encouraging, but still equally valid critique. These three statements all have the same exact meaning, but each carry a different tone. They all say the same thing about what needs to be fixed, and so all have the same value. The only difference between them is the likelihood that they will be accepted by a given audience. Learn to compartmentalize. As I said before, tone does not invalidate a critique. Tone is usually the part people have trouble dealing with. It can be especially difficult with text, as text itself carries no tone, and so the perceived tone is determined by whatever mood you're currently in, or your level of experience in dealing with criticism. You may be familiar with the character of the angry video game nerd, someone who is known for being extremely vulgar and over the top in his criticisms. Directed at an individual, one might say that he's being a bully, but other people might laugh at him because he's yelling at a game. Some might still be offended at him simply because of his tone, period, or because even if a game was made by a company, there are still people who worked hard on that work, and you may feel for those people. But most people, even if they aren't fond of his delivery, can tell that it is just for entertainment. He's not trying to hurt anyone. If one were to strip away the over-the-top acting, there would be a very plain message with value to anyone else trying to make the same kind of art. Now assume that was directed at you. Assume someone wrote a long rant about you, yelled at you, called you names, but also pointed out the parts of your work that got them so worked up, the parts that made them so angry to begin with. If you were to ignore the insults, you'd be left with just the info you need to know about what needs fixing. It can be annoying, tiresome, even hurtful, but you get used to it, and eventually it doesn't bother you anymore. The more experience you get, the easier it will be to ignore those rude words. At the end of the day, they're just filler as much as an overly long gag or a skit or anything else like that might be distracting in a review. Case in point, the nostalgia critic does both, getting angry and vulgar, and making distracting jokes that can sometimes go on for way too long. But if you were to ignore those parts and just focus on the critique, you'd find value in his videos. Don't take things personally. Sometimes people reviewing your work throw in personal insults. Kelvin's animated avatar is stupid. Those ears are so big. Might as well call him Dumbo Shadewing. Sometimes people just throw those in because that's their humor. Ignore it. You're not obligated to like or even acknowledge it any more than they're obligated to like your brand of humor. Humor is the most subjective thing in the world. Pick anything you think isn't funny, and I guarantee there's a bunch of people out there who think it is. I've even seen people get upset over criticisms of work that isn't even their own. Fans crusading for the honor of artists because of a negative critique they found about it. I'll tell you this, going out of your way to threaten someone because they don't like something that you like is not only extremely immature, it is bullying. And I personally find that kind of behavior disgusting. It's also insulting to the artist because one makes it look like they can't take criticism, even if they can, and acts like they can't speak for themselves. That speaks more poorly of the artist than any negative critique. Taking things too personally is a habit that only makes one more susceptible to bullying, and can even turn that person into a bully themselves. It is one of the most important shortcomings for all of us to get over in our lives, and failing to do so will just make it easier for people to drag you through the mud. Confront issues directly. If someone does include an actual critique in their commentary, it's only fair to tackle it head on. I don't mean attacking the person, I mean addressing the issue. When I made my video about the Dragonbox Pyra, I made quite a few mistakes that were pointed out to me. I didn't sweep it under the rug or argue, especially since I was being given evidence of my mistakes. Facts that made me stand corrected. I made a new video going over each issue I got wrong. I admitted to my mistakes and corrected them, sharing the new information I had been given. When someone gives you a critique, address their points and try to improve. If it's something you're not able to fix, take note of it for next time and thank them for pointing it out. Things to avoid. Demanding constructive criticism. Constructive criticism is a form of criticism that points out something wrong, but also offers advice or instructions on how to fix the issue. This is sometimes the best kind of criticism you can hope for, but at the same time should not be expected from everyone. Some people simply won't know how to fix what's wrong. It's like someone looking in your car and finding something broken in your engine. They can see it's broken, but that doesn't mean they know how to fix it. However, knowing what's wrong with your work could lead to you figuring out the answer yourself, or if you can't, you can take that criticism to others and ask if they have any ideas. In that way, critique without constructive advice can still be valuable. Also, not being given those instructions can be more educational. For the same reason your teacher doesn't give you the answer to every question in school, figuring out the solution to yourself can be a better learning experience than someone just telling you what to do. So, my advice is to try to solve the issue yourself before seeking help. Depending on friends and family. Oftentimes, depending on friends and family for critique is like eating just the marshmallows out of your Lucky Charms. These people are very likely concerned about your feelings and don't want to see you hurt or let down. Because of this, they'll most likely not want to tell you what's wrong with your work. and even tell you something's good when you can see for yourself that there are glaring issues with it. The thing is, they just want to support you, and to them, the best way to do that is with emotional support. If you must get criticism from friends and family, explain to them how important it is that you know what needs fixing. Even if they don't have the expertise to tell you how to fix it, at least telling you what looks off can help you figure it out. This can help them out as well, as they may not share your area of expertise and feel unqualified to tell you how to improve. Reassuring them that you only need an opinion to work off of can give them the confidence to critique your work fairly. Friends and family care about you, so they're an easy place to get feedback from and can be good for those just beginning to learn how to take criticism. But it can become too easy to be dependent on them. You should try to branch out, get feedback from people online and outside your family as well. If you plan on getting into art as a career, the people paying you for your art are going to have expectations, and will be very critical if you don't meet them, which is just another reason why it's so important to learn how to deal with negative criticism. And the people close to you can end up becoming a crutch that you should not take to work with you. There are some defenses I've often heard others use. I myself am guilty of using some of them in the past. I'd like to go over them and why they don't work.
But I worked so hard.
And that's why it's so important to get criticism on something you put effort into. Putting effort into a project means it shows a clear and accurate example of your ability, meaning criticism of it will be more effective as well. If you weren't working hard on it, like just asking for advice on a doodle you did in 5 minutes, then the criticism isn't going to help you. It's like the RPG example. You aren't going to get much experience fighting a low-level monster, even if it's easy to do. And while high-level monsters have better yields, they're also more likely to send you limping back to your save point. That's why you try again. Take what you learn from that encounter and do better.
Let's see you do better.
The most common response to this one is, it doesn't take a chef to know when the food tastes like crap. And they're right! Your audience doesn't need to have better work than you on their resume to be able to critique you. If that were the case, most of us would have no source to learn from because the pyramid gets smaller the higher you go. There are less and less people to learn from the higher you set your standards. Just because someone doesn't have an award-winning animation or a painting in a museum under their belt doesn't mean they can't be of help to you. Besides, I used that defense on the VG resource, and you know what happened? Someone freaking did it! They took my sprite and edited it to be better, making me eat my own words. So don't use this defense unless you're prepared to have someone actually take your challenge and show you up.
I didn't ask for your opinion.
Reality check. You put your work out there for people to see, and people are going to talk about it regardless of whether or not you ask them to. I'm sure you've done your fair share of commenting on things the artist never asked for comments on, so saying this is often hypocritical as well. Besides, why would you share your art if you didn't want to know what people actually think of it? That's just silly.
You're just jealous.
Ask yourself this. Why would they be jealous? Are they a competitor? Are they doing the same thing as you and trying to reach your level? You know, a lot of artists that are friends are also taking commissions, which technically makes them competitors, yet they are still friends and still support each other and lift each other up. Maybe that someone commenting on your work wants to see it done better so you get more business. Maybe they're trying to lift you up too. Maybe they want to see you get better so that you provide better content for them to enjoy. And if they aren't doing the same thing as you, if they're involved in something else entirely and they actually were jealous of you, don't you think they'd be trying to do the same thing? I'll give you an example of a jealous user. Someone who re-uploads your art in their own gallery, or traces your work and calls it their own. They are jealous because you made it and they didn't, and they are trying to steal attention from you. The dumb thing about this is that they're usually caught quickly, and if they were trying to make money off your work, you can typically take legal action against them. Barring that though, can you really prove someone is jealous of you? Honestly, I don't think you can, and that's a very self-absorbed thing to say in general. If you really want to make yourself look petty and self-aggrandizing, just say others are jealous of your success.
You just want to see something beautiful torn down. It's insulting, so it doesn't deserve my attention.
You know what? I'll be honest. Some people actually are like this. Some people honestly do want to hold you back because it's fun, because it makes them feel powerful. Bullying is usually born out of a desire for dominance, and if they can't do it in person, they'll do it online. They want to see you stop improving. They want to see you fail to reach your maximum potential, and they want to see you act immature. Does that justify ignoring what they say entirely? No. In fact, ignoring them gives them power over you, because oftentimes they're using their most powerful tool against you, the truth. Let's say a bully puts an honest critique in their comment, something that would fix up the work you're doing entirely, the crux of everything wrong with what you've done, and wraps it in a big, stinking ball of every nasty, hurtful thing they can think of. If you're too sensitive to criticism, you'll dismiss the entire thing. But you may remember it as well, including the actual key to fixing your art. Because you're so incensed by their words, you'll associate it all with their hate. Eventually, someone will echo that critique, and you'll remember the hate that came with it the first time. You'll assume this new critic, even if they're gentler, kinder, and more respectful, is just serving you a thinly veiled message of hate, and you'll reject them. You may find a friend of yours shares that critique, and for it, you will feel betrayed. Maybe even end up lashing out at someone you care about because you heard that critique again. Maybe you assume they got it from the same source and suspect them of agreeing with everything the bully said to you. Then a rift forms between you and your friend, and your social life takes a hit. You may even find yourself losing other friendships, telling yourself you're better off without them because they really hate you, and that you just need to find people who won't say those things, all the while clinging to that mistake that has been holding you back this entire time. On the flip side, imagine if you had taken that bully's advice. Imagine if you had fixed that janky leg, filled in that plot hole, cut out that distracting piece in your video, or fixed that moment where you contradicted yourself. By looking past their hate and finding the hidden value they intended to use against you, you've made their plan backfire. You've turned their hatred into a tool for your own development, and now your work is better than ever. The people who tried to bring you down ended up lifting you higher than before, and now they are the ones who look foolish. You might even thank them, heaping the proverbial hot coals upon their heads in doing so. By taking the mature route, acknowledging the bully's criticism instead of rejecting it, you can beat the bully at their own game. That is the true power of knowing how to take criticism. To be able to defend yourself against them, to take the gravity they intended to pull you down with, and use it as a slingshot to propel yourself upwards. Sometimes listening to your detractors can be the most rewarding experience of your career. Replying with hate. It should go without saying that fighting fire with fire just makes more fire. Replying to a criticism with hate just makes you look childish, and insecure can likely lead to a victim complex. Again, you're only hurting yourself. Blocking negativity. If you block everyone who criticizes you, you're only depriving yourself of input that you could use. Sometimes your critics will want to talk things out with you, and try to invite you to do so. They may see blocking as an admission of defeat, that you are afraid to defend yourself against them or admit your mistake. To not own up to your mistakes, no matter how minor, is to give up an opportunity for growth. Slander and libel. Now, specifically speaking, slander is spoken and libel is written. But for the sake of brevity, I'll just say slander for both here. It can be very easy to accuse someone who is criticizing your work of lying about it. After all, if they convince people your work is bad, that could be bad for business. So you feel the need to defend yourself, right? A defense one might be quick to come up with is to discredit their critic and accuse them of defaming you in order to shut them up. Or maybe they made a review using your work that you didn't like, and you want to accuse them of stealing to try to make them take back what they did. You need to understand that this is an incredibly dangerous thing to do. Accusing someone of slander or theft when there is no evidence supporting your claims, as well as there being evidence against you, is in itself slander. In your attempt to defend yourself, you may actually be putting yourself into trouble with the law. Remember, if someone uses your work to comment on it, or as evidence to support their commentary on something else, that will most likely fall under fair use. I'm not saying that it will absolutely fall under fair use, as that's a thing only a judge can decide, but to just say they're stealing content is false, and falsely accusing someone of stealing is slander. If you are going to make any sort of accusation against anyone, have evidence. I cannot stress enough how important it is not to make accusations without it. Additionally, if you are trying to fight a critic by calling them a thief or slanderer, most people will just take that as you admitting you have no real defense against their statements. For example, This can look even worse if the person criticizing you has evidence of you doing something wrong. If they're saying things about you based on evidence, then you'll need evidence of your own to prove them wrong. Remember, you can only really get away with calling slander on someone if you can prove their statements about you false. For instance, if someone says, "Calvin lives in a cave and eats people," I would show them a picture of my airship and prove to them that I, in fact, do not live in a cave. Also, most judges can tell when someone is making a joke, so if you try to use a joke as evidence, you're gonna get your case thrown out. That's all I have to say right now about taking criticism, but I'm sure there's more to it that can be discussed. To that, I hope to hear what you guys have to say. I am open to all critiques, positive and negative, not only on this video, but also on all things I make. Before I go, I'd like to thank Z-Blade Grayson and Solid Scale for their own critiques while I was drafting this. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope you will join me next time.